Well, good morning and good afternoon, everybody. It looks like people are starting to filter in. I'm Curtis Rude, and we'll be answering everyone's questions today regarding what they might be working on in decisions. For everyone that's already logged in, if you have any questions, please feel free to submit them, and we'll start down that path. Looks like Jeff is the first one prepared. Let's take a look. So Jeff has a really interesting question about how APIs are being distilled and consumed in later versions of decisions. So you're absolutely correct. The formatting has changed with how you've called them. You do not, the lack of the output equals JSON is not going to be an issue. That will be the default if that's how you're still consuming it. Now, as far as updating your integrations to use that new format. So I would say this, let's go ahead and dive into what it looks like to build one of these integrations. So if you're here and you're going to go to your create data types integrations and look at your external services, go to add a REST service. The first thing to look at, right, is that you have the ability to provide that service URL. Now that will never update. Right. Presumably, as long as the publishing service doesn't change. So if you can distill, the meaningful values there in the service URL, I would keep that as a constant. And then as those kind of back end objects change, how we call in the flow ID, for example, you could then update the service and not necessarily the entire, or update the method and not necessarily the entire service. But that's so you do have to update, when you move into future versions of decisions, if you do update to version 6, for example, and that URL to post or get does change, you will have to update accordingly. Very much so.
Before you go too far, I think the dialog you have open is for when you set up a REST service, like decisions is calling out, right?
Correct. Right. And so, for example, if you wanted to do something in decisions and then utilize that as a flow, or sorry, as an API, it's not going to, you still have that same option. So if we're going to go here, we'll make this our API service, keep it very simple. But as you do update through decisions, if you do go to version 6, you will have to take that API or that flow rule set, whatever it may be, publish it as a service, and then update the URL accordingly.
Oh, okay. So you're saying you're moving away from like having every object exposed RESTfully to a model where you have to declare which flows you use that you can call RESTfully from an external software.
So, everything will still be available to call RESTfully. Okay. So let's, for example, if we were to plug in here, this will be we'll give you a string output. And now per that flow, right, you do have to come up here and view your integrations tab. It'll open up in a new window or a new tab. And this is going to be version 7. So this might be slightly different than what you see it as, but the details will be the same.
Okay.
So as these URLs, how they're, built dynamically as decisions, you will have to update them accordingly. Correct.
Okay, I think I understand.
Perfect. And so Martin has a question about how they could integrate decisions with a CI/CD platform, and what would that look like in decisions. So if we are able to, can we allow Martin to come in over mic? Martin, if you want to unmute and just kind of explain your use case a little bit further.
Yeah, hi.
Welcome.
Thank you. I have our team of development is asking whether decisions can actually do that. Because for development, we use something like the Circle CI, which allows us to keep track of everything that our development team is pushing to production.
Mm-hmm.
And so our question is, because our setup currently consists of a development, a repo server, and a production environment for decisions. So is there a way to maybe get something like that in between that could help us, monitor everything that's happening within decisions, not having to give access to the platform to other people? You know what I mean?
No, it's a really interesting question, right? Because, the typical use case is for people to integrate within a particular instance of decisions. And here you're more or less talking about capturing an integration layer operation as you move objects from different environments to different instances. And it's a really interesting use case. Did you specify what it was you're currently using as your CI/CD platform?
Circle CI.
So I'll have to look into that and get back to you. I'm gonna actually look at the actual platform itself and see what our options are from a decisions perspective. My inclination is to say that you would have to basically build that integration at a higher level, so that you were able to more or less the repo operations that you would do in decisions would then basically send the details of that push or pull to your CI/CD platform and see what we could do from there. But I'm going to go ahead and research a little bit further, and I'll keep track of your email and I'll get back to you probably by tomorrow.
That would be awesome. Thank you, Curtis.
No, that's a fantastic question. It's an interesting use case. Let's see here. We do have something in the chat. Or maybe we don't at the moment. Okay. So after looking at Martin's question, does anyone have any other questions they'd like to ask, or any burning questions about the decisions platform in general that we could take a look at today? Sure. So with the time we have remaining, Sabrina, or here we go. It looks like we do have a question. So where can we find the video of tomato and pear? Sabrina, do you know if those videos have been distilled from Decisions Days? Is that something that we have available?
I'm not 100% sure, but I can check and get back to you.
That would be great. Thank you.
Sure.
So with the time that we do have remaining, we did have one question pre-submitted, and while we wait for that question to, or while we wait for that person to attend, it's an interesting enough use case that I think it might be worth discussing while we wait for some more questions. So if a question does come up, if there's something you'd like to know, please post it in the chat and we'll go ahead and answer it then and there. Until then, let's start talking about human resources and what's available in Decisions, and then what can you easily build while you're working from Decisions. So out of the box, Decisions does have a human resources employee onboarding module that can be accessed through the My Apps folder in the Decision Studio. And from here, once you install it, then you would have the ability to utilize the flows, dashboards, and processes that are part of that employee onboarding application. Now, of course, there are many more facets to human resources that might need to be incorporated into decisions, right? So you could have application management, organizational management, payroll, workspace management, all of those things, right, encompass a good human resources, vertical inside of a company. Now, the majority of the tasks that need to be accomplished for human resources are going to fall into not necessarily a process-driven event, but more likely a milestone-driven event. And for those particular use cases, you're usually best off designing what we consider to be a case entity process. So if I were to come in here into a designer folder, you can simply start, instead of starting this process by creating a flow, for example, we would then start this process by creating a data type first. From here, we can go down to our case entity. And what's nice about this is that it's going to give you the ability to distill a process in terms of achievable milestones, right? Different benchmarks of progress that would then automatically generate some other type of interaction. So for example, this could be our, support ticketing system. And for this, we would want to track our ticket submitter. The version number of decisions for which that ticket is for, as well as the question itself. From here, we can go ahead and save. And as soon as you create this, you can see that decisions is going to spin its wheels as it builds some out of the box steps for you to utilize as you build your process. For those of you that are just joining, we're kind of just briefly discussing some of the built-in interactions for a case entity. However, if you do have other questions, please go ahead, post them in the question and answer chat, and we'll go ahead and discuss them. So you can see that out of the box, right, your two states are going to be started and completed, right? And so what you can do is you can start to then add activities, other processes, other events that will be kicked off automatically as you start to navigate through this process, right? So realistically for us, this started event is going to be launched as soon as a user submits a ticket, right? And so from here, we can start talking about, okay, well, once a ticket is submitted, we receive a ticket, what's the first thing that we want to do? Well, we're going to go ahead and we're going to build a flow that would then basically determine the routing of the ticket. Okay, so we do have a question posted about the service host manager watcher.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay, hi, this is JK. The question I have is that in our setup, we have, a decisions node, a VM, right? And then we have the SQL cluster. And in the SQL Server cluster, we have two nodes sitting underneath, and the decision node is talking to the listener IP, right? So, I mean, when everything is up and running, it runs smoothly. But there are occasions when, the system would be automatically restarted. When I say the system, the decisions VM would go for a restart after a patch. It could be a security patch, or it could be a scheduled restart or whatever. So the things goes down, right, on the decisions node, and we do have this watcher service running 24/7. But what we notice is that it does not bring up all the the tenant services on the decision node, right? And I would like to understand the purpose of the watcher. Can you explain exact the job or description of that watcher program?
Sure. So at the outset, right, all of your decisions functionality is going to come from that decisions service host manager, right?
Yeah.
So you're not going to get any inherent functionality really from having the watcher available. The watcher is more from a logging troubleshooting perspective to keep track of events that are happening at the service host manager level. You'll notice that the instance I have up and running for this particular conversation is decisions version 7. You'll notice that in decisions version 7, there actually is no service host manager. More importantly, there's no service host manager watcher, right? So in later versions of decisions, we do away with that entirely.
Really?
And now there's just
Okay.
a decisions server, right?
Gotcha. Okay.
So, and the majority of our client, or not the majority, we do have several clients though, that while utilizing that will only use the Service Host Manager Watcher. That will be an automatically started process or something that starts with a delay. Whereas the Service Host Manager is by default turned off and only turned back on, when there's, some level, some higher level troubleshooting or logging that they're trying to capture.
Okay, so you're saying the watcher doesn't do much at all?
If everything's working correctly, yeah, exactly.
Okay.
If everything's working as intended, you'll be fine just utilizing the Service Host Manager. On my other versions of decisions, I do not have the watcher on by default.
Okay, so we are still in the version 6.18, right? So still I didn't get my answer to my question, right? So basically the watcher is running, the SHM is running, and this is a multi-tenant instance of decisions, by the way, right? So we have tenant 1, tenant 2, tenant 3. They're all listed as different Windows services in your listing right here. I mean, you have a single instance, but in my case, we have multi-instance, right? So the problem is that once the system goes for a restart, automatic restart, I was hoping that, the services also would be started, but all the tenant level services are set to automatic, so which I was hoping that it's going to bring up automatically when the server comes online, right? But what we notice is that it does not, right? It kind of leaves the system down even though they are set to automatic, right? So the question I have is that how do we make sure that when a system goes for a restart, how do we ensure that all the services associated with the SHM and the tenant services are brought up successfully? Now I want to throw one more curveball into this mix here, right? So now, as I was saying, right, we have the SQL cluster, which is a separate set of load balancer VM on the side, and that the SQL cluster also could go for a restart because of security patch from the SQL server or a maintenance or whatever the activity, right? So that server could go on its own schedule up and down, and then we have the decision node, right? So in one instance, what we noticed is that the SQL Server VM went offline, and then it came back online, but the decision one kind of sitting in a limbo state, right? And it wasn't started cleanly, or it got stuck in the middle, and we can't really stop the SHM anymore. And so then that means there is a manual intervention to to kill the process and then start all over again, right? And so in my example, I have two instances. One is that when a system goes for a scheduled restart, there is no way to ensure that all services are back online gracefully. And the second instance is that the SQL server is going on its own up and down, and it has a direct impact on the decision node VM, and again it goes into a limbo state, right? So how do we avoid all these things gracefully? I was thinking that the watcher process, the whole purpose is to bring everything back online if something goes offline, right?
Sure. So do you have access to your services?
I don't. This is from production. I'm talking.
Gotcha. Okay. So I would be very interested to look if you go to your services, and for example, I'll just click on the decision server one. If I look at my properties and I go to my dependencies, do you have those dependencies? Like, are these processes actually attached? So
yeah,
like
we would see all the tenants listed here, correct?
Okay. So if they are listed here, let's see, why would they not start if they are linked to one another? So I think the best step forward for us here, and did you say, were you pronouncing your name just Jay, or?
You can call me JK. Yeah.
JK?
Yeah.
So I think the best process for us moving forward for this, something along these lines, right? Because if it's not working as intended, it sounds like you have everything set up correctly just at the outset. So why don't we get together and I'll reach out to you after the lunch and learn, and we'll go ahead and we'll get a support ticket put in. I'll make sure you have the wording properly set up, because it does sound like you have things initially set up properly, in which case it's going to be a support ticket, and we're going to want to go ahead and get that fixed.
Sounds good. Okay. All right. So in version 7, you're saying the whole watcher goes away, and instead of SHM, now it is called decision server. So I assume all the tenant level services would be still listed as the individual services, correct?
That's accurate.
Okay, got it. All right, and the watcher. So now, what is the replacement for the watcher?
So now everything is going to be incorporated into this decision server
Okay.
service.
Okay, so if the decision server got stuck in the middle, what happens?
So, I mean, you're talking about like if it gets stuck in some sort of limbo again.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's going to be more of a particular, like a server level operation. Again, if you go through your properties and we go on to our recovery here and we start talking about failures and what actions we can take and what we're going to start doing if things, start failing for, a timeout level, we can start automating those things from there. Now, if you do see those things happen, one thing that might be worthwhile for you, are you collecting the logs at all these points whenever this is happening?
Yeah, we do have the logs, but it doesn't have much information. That's what I noticed so far, right? There is no, I mean, I do see from the event log, from the whole machine level itself, right? We see that things going up and down, right? We do have the information, but from a decision standpoint, I don't see much information. Maybe it is buried somewhere, more details, but certainly we can get you the whole logs if that helps. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the best next step for us is we'll go ahead, we'll get a ticket submitted so that this starts going down the appropriate path, because it sounds like if you're having this problem, it's not going to be just a you problem. This sounds like there might actually be a defect that we need to get solved.
Okay. And so in this case, right, let's say in your case, the decision server is running now. What if you pull the plug on the SQL server right now? Would the decision server go down or would it still be running?
So the decision server, so you're talking not just the data, but like the configuration level?
No. I just bring down the SQL server right now. So what happens to that decision server?
Sure. So you're going to see a particular error message. So you would be able to get
on
to
the
decision.
UX.
Yeah. So you would be able to get to, let me go ahead and see if I can recreate this. So you would be able to get to here, right? And this would all populate accordingly. But if you tried to log in, that's where you'd get an error, and you wouldn't be able to get past that.
I get that, but the decision server service that you showed, right, in the backend, would that be still running?
It would say that it's running, correct?
Okay, so the only way to recover from that is what? I have to stop that and then bring up the SQL server, then bring back online. Or if I bring back the SQL server, would it automatically reconnect where it left off?
The last one, right? So as soon as the SQL server is fixed, without starting, so I personally, like if I'm solving something on a SQL server, I will stop the service, fix the SQL server, and then restart the services. However, if you were to bypass that, which is fine, when you do fix SQL, it's going to go through that process and everything will pick up accordingly.
Yeah, got it. Because the whole the maintenance of the SQL server is done by a different team, right? They may not know that there is a dependency on the other side. That's why there is a little clash there of the correspondence, right, between the teams. And I was just looking for an automated way to recover gracefully without having to make a phone call or email or tickets or whatever, right? It should, once things come back online, it should snap everything back together, right? So as if there was no issue.
Correct. Yeah, I know I've done that a couple times in version 7. I'll go ahead. I believe that that's still how version 6 would work. My recollection is that it is, but I'll go ahead and confirm that as well. And again, when we get together to put in your support ticket, we can incorporate those kind of questions and maintenance, or not necessarily maintenance, but best practices in regards to how to handle those variant events.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you. That's all from me.
Yeah, perfect. All right. Have we had any more questions come in during that discussion? Doesn't look like it quite yet. So in the interim, until some other questions come up, I will just at least finish my thought that we were discussing regarding the case entities. But from there, we might go ahead and return some time back to your guys' busy schedule. Let's go ahead and. And Sabrina, if I do miss a question, or looks, we do have now we have a hand up. Hey, good afternoon, Alex.
Hey, Curtis, can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, great. I guess I have a microphone. Yeah, so a couple of these are kind of like perhaps lazy person questions, but I would like to get, some feedback about assignments on a variety of levels.
Okay.
Like, for example, is there a way in decisions to get rid of all the assignments?
So globally, get rid of all the assignments?
Well, like, for example, I'm doing some testing and then basically I want to go live. So now I just basically want to empty out all evidence of all assignments that have been.
Sure. So are you saying you're gonna go live in the same environment that the process exists in currently?
Yeah.
Okay. So for that particular type of operation, what you would want to start with is for you, if you go to your search bar and you type in something along the lines of fetch entity.
Okay, so if I understand correctly, you're going to cycle through these things and mark them as deleted?
So if you mark, so it's a great, I think I know where you're going with this. So if you mark them as deleted, right, what that's really going to do is at a database level, it's going to basically put on a deleted flag, a Boolean value, without
Right.
actually removing the records.
Okay.
And so it sounds like you want to actually remove the records.
Well, I'm just wondering what my options are.
Sure. So I would still start with this fetch entities. You're absolutely right. If you do just utilize the expire or delete assignments, it is going to simply basically mark a Boolean flag that will show the assignment as deleted, but it wouldn't truly remove it from the database.
Which means I could put them up on a report, and if I don't have filtering to remove the deleted ones, they would show up.
So by default, and this is going to depend on the type of data types you're utilizing and the reports that you're building. By default, deleted or assignments marked as deleted should not come back in a report built around the data source of an assignment.
Okay.
So that should not be the case. And if that's what you're seeing, that's something we could certainly look at.
No, I'm just wondering, so is there a way to force them onto the report?
So yeah, so if you wanted to force them onto a report, what you're going to end up doing. So if you create a report, let's go ahead and so you see that you have
I
a
guess I'm
couple
kind
of
of
these.
also curious, like, why would you want to delete them?
Delete them as in
opposed to
flag
just,
them, or
as opposed to just completing them.
so as opposed, so there's a couple reasons to delete an assignment, and it's going to come down again mostly to reporting. So that if you complete an assignment, then it's going to still show up on your standard default reports.
Okay.
Whereas if you delete it, it would not, right? So deleting it is more or less trying to pretend that particular assignment didn't exist,
Okay.
right? And so if you want to be able to not necessarily complete something, but let's say reject it, that would be another data point that you want to add to your data type. So then you could keep track of those metrics, right? So the difference between
Right.
completing versus a rejected path versus whether or not I deleted it. So to basically hide it so the reason that Boolean there, right, is kind of more of a best practices, right? Because if we allow you to just natively delete assignments, then we're kind of breaking one of the very first tenets of making an auditable process, right? We
Right.
don't want to go ahead and break an audit trail, right? There's very good reasons for why you might want a deleted process to still be able to be surfaced in the future, if not only to understand, what were some bad business practices that were taking place that resulted in this, this particular amount of assignments being deleted. But in your case, right, your case is slightly different, right? Because we're going to go from a non-production setting to something that's going live while in the same environment, right? So in those okay, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, but because you brought up that auditable thing, that leads me into another question. So my understanding is that I could conceivably, somewhere in this UI, there's something that gives me access to a query window.
That's
And
correct. Mhm.
I could conceivably delete these things in the query window.
So that's correct. Yeah, you could delete them through a SQL operation. That's
Okay,
accurate.
so now I guess, and my question becomes, so is that audited?
The deletion of the records would be a tagged event, right? The operation that you perform there would be something that's tracked, yes.
No, but if I go into SQL and just say delete all these assignments, is that audited?
The deletion event is not, you would not have access to those records anymore, though. You're correct. But we would be able to say, hey, at this point, Alex Potter, deleted these records from the database.
Okay, so like from like an auditor could conceivably ask me, like, show me if anyone has been tampering with the database at the SQL level, and that is an answerable question.
That is an answerable question. That's correct.
Okay,
Now,
perfect.
part of that will also come down to your SQL logging parameters that you have set on your instance. But the event itself, as long as those parameters aren't, overwritten, or you have some other setting in SQL, then you would be able to, that event would be tracked.
Okay, so well, you're hosting us. So in a hosted environment, is the default settings, such that that kind of behavior would get logged?
So I know that it is, at least the last time I checked, it is, but it's such an important question. I'm going to go ahead and double check the answer for you, because I don't want to be the one that leads you down a bad audit. So
Okay.
the answer is yes, but let me go ahead. I'm going to double check that for you, because it's an important question, like you noted.
Okay, so but down the deleted ordinary deleted path, then basically I just write a flow, cycle through the assignments that I'm interested in deleting, and do like a whatever it's called, a mapping step, which sets the deleted attribute to true.
That's accurate. Mhm.
Okay, great. And so, but you're saying that even on a report, I could conceivably force those records to show up if I wanted to look at it from like an admin report point of view.
Precisely.
Okay, great. And so the other kind of thing that I'm wondering how it works with assignments is that when you do like a reassign,
Mhm.
what happens? Does it just update the same record with a new value for the all assignments kind of thing?
So that depends on a setting. So let me go ahead and pull on a quick form here. Right, let's go ahead and we're gonna make the simplest form you've ever seen.
Okay.
Call this our. I wasn't lying. It's gonna be a very simple form. So from here, right, if I were to go in here and my assignment type, we'll set this to assigned. You can ignore these values here. Let's go look at our assignment setup, right? And if you go down to your assignment setup, you have the ability to start specifying starts, warns, late, escalates, and expire. And if you call down, you can see here where you have the ability to reuse an assignment, right? By default, it's no. So for example, if you route, so right now, right, if I were to say, I want to create a reassignment path, and I go ahead and I put a create data step in, and I route this in here like this, and then I route this back into that assignment, this is a new assignment. Even though it's the same form, even though it's the same person potentially that it's being assigned to, this is a new assignment, and it would show up as two assignments as far as your process is concerned. However, if you go down to your assignment here, and you were to say that you can reuse assignments, if it's the same assignee or always, that's going to basically say this is still the same assignment, and it would just be the one assignment event.
Okay, and so what attributes get flagged in the original one if the attribute is set at no and a new assignment is created? What happens to the original assignment?
So you're talking about, so let's say, for example, let me go ahead, and I apparently lied to you. I'm going to make this form slightly more complex.
Make it as simple as possible, but no simpler.
Let's do this. So not only is there a say or a submit, but we're also going to add a save process, right? And so if we come back here, so if they submit it, right, we're going to basically go to conclude this process. However, if they save it, we're going to change some data. There might be a mapping step in there somewhere. We're going to change some data and send it back into this. Now, the act of this, like this happening would basically complete that first assignment and reopen a second assignment. So it sounds like your question is, what ability would you have to still interact with that first assignment? And you would not have any.
My question is, how does it get completed? Like, does it say reassigned as the completed value?
Oh, no. So the completed value here would be the save path. And so this would be marked as, saved. And so task 1 would be complete, and then you would get task 2. And maybe a good way to show this is, what if I said my assignment name, and we'll go ahead, we'll make this a constant value too. This is to reviewer request. And if I look at my assignment name, let's go to a merge plain text. And let's just say that for our name, and you'd probably want more information on this, but I think it kind of helps it prove our point, is we could just take a start time, right? Or even a current time. If I go through this, right, that first assignment is going to have, the current date time there, right?
Yep.
If I go ahead and save it, and let's say that we get a timestamp to go down to the millisecond value. If I save it, this assignment is now completed in Decision's eyes. And that next assignment would basically be another option, like a new item in the user's inbox. And it would have a slightly different timestamp, right? Because it's now a different assignment. Even though it's the same web form, same inputs, same information may still be there, it's considered a different assignment.
So I guess, I'm still a little unclear. So I'm going to give you I should have given you this before. The context is really, I'm on vacation and, I have an assignment that's outstanding that needs to be done. So it gets reassigned to my colleague. So what changes at the assignment level? I used to have an assignment.
And now you no longer do, right?
And I no longer do, but that assignment resides in the database and it has been completed. But what's the completed path? Is that does it say something like reassigned?
So it can, it can. And that would be something that you define a little bit further. So we actually.
Okay, so in the reassignment, I would actually make that, decision.
Well, let me answer your question a little bit further. So if we were to jump into, let's find a meaningful dashboard here. We want
nice.
With, thank you. Let's go look at our, okay. So this might be an illustrative example. Let's see here. See, I want slightly more information. Let's do this. Give me just 1 minute tops, I promise.
Yeah, no worries.
Good news is that I can fill out this information pretty quickly.
This looks very nice.
Yeah, and people smarter than myself spent a lot of time making this look really, really cleanly, and now I just claim credit for it.
So is this stuff available as for customers to look at and emulate?
It could be, yeah. So typically, if someone, for example, this is typically what I'll show as part of a demonstration. And so we'll send the video over as well as some other useful things after the demo. But if it was something that they were they wanted something, hey, I really want to know how this image recognition works that utilizes this, this Google return to give me an accuracy confidence interval, then that's something that we could go ahead, get together and build with them.
Okay, cool.
So we can definitely help you build out these types of functionality if it's something that you're looking for or to emulate in your environment.
Right.
I have one more step to do, and then we'll talk about your question, hopefully with some meaningful context. So now if I go to go ahead.
I think you guys there's a reassign button out of the box, right?
So if you have the right permission, right, you can right click on an assignment and then you could reassign it while you're there.
Right.
So you do have the ability to reassign. So what that would mean for you is if you look here, you can actually see some details that are surfaced for this particular assignment, right? And you can see that the assignment was initially assigned to myself as well as our instrument approval group, right? So if you go in there and you reassign it, it's only going to show the one person there if that's what you're looking to achieve. However, more often than not, just because someone's out of the office will also basically not just reassign it, but assign it to someone else while keeping that initial assignment, in which case there would be two names that show up here. Regardless, in your case, if the other person that was reassigned to was the one that completed it, this would be their name that shows up in the completed by. So
Okay,
it's up to you whether or not both people show up here or just the singular name, the person that it was reassigned to.
okay, great.
And that reassignment event is something that can be tracked at the database level as part of the assignment type.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Perfect. And then if you are interested in some of these features, just go ahead and reach out to us and we can make sure that we can help you, build some of these things out if that's something you were interested in having in your particular environment.
Okay, great, thank you.
Let's see here. All right, it looks like Sabrina, it looks like you took care of some of the questions in chat. Thanks so much. You help so much on these things. Does anyone have any remaining questions before we put a pin or a stamp of approval on the 18th of November lunch and learn session? Great. And Sabrina, anything you want to add before we go ahead and close this up? Sabrina, I see that you're not muted, but I think your Bluetooth mic might have broken on us again, which is fine. Well, thanks everyone for attending. There were some really amazing questions today. I'll be reaching back out to some of you regarding the questions you asked. So look forward to those emails and hopefully we can get your questions completely answered, if not, or your problem solved the next time we communicate. Thanks, everybody.
Okay, great, thank you.